A late Virgil van Dijk goal gives Liverpool a 2-1 win at home to West Ham. Your old club, Robbo. They're now 13 points clear. If they don't win it next weekend, they can win it at home to Spurs the following week.
Well, they're not playing at their best because at the early part of the season, I thought they were absolutely outstanding. Under Arne Slot came in, got them playing some great football. They were playing at high intensity. They were doing all the things they did under Jurgen Klopp, but with more composure on the ball, and they looked a threat every time they went forward. That's not been the case in recent weeks, but every team that wins the league at some point will have a dip in form and have a little bit of a nervous spell. They're having a nervous spell, but still doing enough to win games. And it was a good last minute goal from Van Dijk in the air in a game that West Ham actually played very well in the second half. So
and how about that Mohamed Salah pass for special?
Yeah, very good. And sticking with Mohamed Salah, he has a new contract. Gab, you always said they should re-sign him, but at the right price and for the right number of years. Is 2 years at 20 million, reported £20 million a year, absolutely right?
Yeah, I'm told it's actually marginally less than that. I've been told that it amounts to between an 8 and 10% pay rise over what he was on before, when he was already one of the highest paid players in the Premier League. For me, the 2 years are huge. I think the club have looked around and said, okay, it's not so much the cost of replacing him, blah, blah, blah. It's just that they have a lot to do this summer. I think they looked at what happened in the second half of the season, the dip. I mean, we can look at this, but they're not playing European footballs, right? So they're playing once a week.
Yep.
And still you get performances like this where they struggle a little bit physically and whatnot. And I think they want to address that. They've got a lot of things to address in the summer. And they said, you know what, this is one less thing. It's not going to cost us too long. It's not a long-term commitment. And, ultimately, Salah's 32. It's not like he's 35 years old. So, yeah, I think this was the right number.
So Chelsea go 2 goals down. I know you're at the game, Gab, at home to Ipswich before battling back to draw 2-2. Maresca says the crowd's reaction didn't help them, especially when it came to the second goal.
Yeah, okay, so he's referring to the fact that the crowd...
Were you booing them as well?
Chelsea were okay for the 15, 20 minutes. Then Ipswich score, and then Chelsea just turned into kind of little piles of little goat turds, essentially. It was honestly, it was terrible. It was really, really bad. And they try to pay out from the back. Robert Sanchez looks terrified as he tries to do that. He's got Tosin to aim at, like Beckenbauer, right, Tosin? And so the crowd just get on the back, and so he hits it long, and kind of directly off his long kick, Ipswich go right down and score. That's not the reason why they scored, though. And he says, well, the crowd agitated them, and so they kicked it long. Yeah, Maresca's explanation here doesn't help. The reality is he's got a ton of mitigating circumstances. This is a really, really badly constructed team. I don't think many of these players are as good, anywhere near as good as advertised or as...
Will they get into the Champions League?
I think they can. Look, they could have won this game. They could also, the goalkeeper, Palmer, made at least 2 huge saves.
Yep.
But Chelsea could have also lost this because Ipswich also had chances. They're just too dependent on Cole Palmer right now. And Nico, who's come back from an injury, not really himself. These other guys, I don't know, Madueke, Neto.
But would you expect, at the start of the season, would you expected them to be in the top 4?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yes. Yeah, because I think Maresca's a good coach. Manchester City also go 2 goals down, except they then storm back to win 5-2. Robbo, Kevin De Bruyne makes everything better. I am going to miss him when he leaves us.
So am I. I mean, I love watching him play. He can see a pass that other people can't see. If you're watching a game, you see a player on the far side, you think, that's the ball, and he'll play the ball. He looked fit and quite athletic at the weekend.
Wait, what about this idea that he had some sort of congenital injury at this time of the year and he can only play 3 minutes at a time? Now all of a sudden it seems like he plays 90 minutes every game.
So I don't know what's gone on there. He said after the game, he said he feels injury free and happy now. He said it's a total difference
because he's leaving.
Maybe so, but he's played very well. He's been Man City's main player for so long now.
All right, wait, Coach Robbo. He's played at 10 for as long back. I mean, he played wing earlier in his career, but most of his career he made as a 10. Obviously, he's getting a little bit older. If some of the concern is about his quickness or whatever, given how good a passer he is, could he play further back?
He could, but he could still play in the number 10 role because you don't need to be quick to play in the number 10 role. He's not going to make that many bursting runs beyond people, but he's got the quickness of thought. He can see a pass, he can play 1 and 2 touch. He's an outstanding player, and he's very good in confined spaces. Playing for a good team, whatever league he goes to, if he's playing in a good team and he's playing in the top third of the field, he'll create chances for others.
He's the yin to Bruno Fernandes's yang.
Yes.
Arsenal and Brentford draw 1-1. Robbo, Arteta says it's not true that they were focused on the return leg with Real Madrid, but his many changes and Liverpool's lead suggest that his nose got a little bit longer when he was saying things like that. And you know what? That's totally fine with me.
It's totally fine with me as well. I think everybody knows that Liverpool are going to win the title. Whatever Arsenal do now, they're not going to be good enough to catch Liverpool. The big game is the one against Real Madrid. If they can get through that, they're in the semi-final of the Champions League, and it's a massive bonus for them, and they could go all the way if they play very well. So
I was totally fine with seeing Kieran Tierney and Georgie out there and Partey at right back. That's fine.
Nothing wrong with that whatsoever.
3 defeats and 4 for Tottenham, who fall away to Wolves 4-2. Rob Ange Postecoglou says they didn't play badly. Do you agree?
They played badly in the most important areas, and that was defensively. They made some real blunders. Players in midfield made mistakes. Romero makes a mistake. The goalkeeper makes 2 mistakes. That's playing badly. You know, you can have some nice plays elsewhere on the field, which is great, but in the big areas and the big moments, they didn't defend well enough. And that's been the case with Tottenham for quite a while. They're too easy to play against.
I don't understand why he says stuff like this.
No, it's wrong.
Eric Cantona says Jim Ratcliffe is destroying the soul of Manchester United. Robbo, does it matter at all what he says?
Well, I came home one Saturday night and watched a programme, I think it was Michael McIntyre's comedy programme, and Eric Cantona was on there thinking he could sing. Now, it was the worst rendition of whatever song he was singing, which proved that he must be mad because he thought he could sing and it was embarrassing. So I take no notice of what he says whatsoever. He might
because he can't sing on the basis that he can't sing.
That he thought he
I'm
could.
tone deaf. I can't sing. I sing in public, but you know.
But he thought he could sing, and it was embarrassing.
He thought he was Frank LaBeouf.
He thought he thought he was. I think he thought he was Frank Sinatra. I don't know Frank LaBeouf, but I wouldn't take too much notice of what Eric Cantona says.
He's speaking at an FC United event, and by the way, tons of respect for FC United and what they built and everything was at the genesis of it. So obviously, you're going to say things along those lines.
Yeah.
But dude, it's not Ratcliffe who destroyed the soul,
No.
if you put it. I mean, the FC United people broke away from United because they felt that certain values, certain things that they believed in, had been betrayed. That was well before under the Glazers. And for you complaining is big business, blah, blah, blah. He doesn't sound like he has a real understanding of what it is right now, what they have to deal with. And by the way, on the big business front, people seem to forget this. Yes, Ratcliffe has a big stake in United. The Glazers have a big stake, but they're a club that's listed on the stock exchange. Some of that stake is in people's pension funds as well, like ordinary Joes and Janes. Back to Spurs. Big Ange Postecoglou says there's a mole at the club leaking injury news to a certain social media account, and he says he thinks he knows who the culprit is, and he's going to take action. It's not quite Wagatha Christie, right? Colleen Rooney and Rebecca Vardy, but it's still kind of no. I feel like Big Ange investigates. But how big a deal is this with the medical information? And by the way, it's something related to Wilson Audebert. Like that really moves the needle.
I would say it makes no difference to the team whatsoever. It might make a difference to Ange. He might be upset that somebody's going behind his back, but in the long, when you're looking at the bigger story, they're losing football games. This leak has nothing to do with them losing football games and making big mistakes on the pitch in big games. It's just
he's
another.
Not using it as an excuse.
He's not. No, he's not using it.
But this is the reason we stink.
But it just makes him look even more unhappy than he already is.
It was like his rant about VAR the week before, right? And how much he hates VAR. Yeah. I'm like, okay, you can hate VAR.
It looks as though the pressure's getting to Big Ange, as you called him.
I'll say this on the I don't understand. Okay, I appreciate your own medical data, especially in Europe. We have strong data protection laws and blah, blah, blah. However, I think it's a little bit different when you're a professional footballer and your physical tools are literally the tools of your trade.
Now, I'd be annoyed if the things that were coming out were incorrect. That was when you, if as a player, you'd have a problem. If somebody's saying, well, he's not particularly, or not injured, or hasn't got this, and he's making out he's injured, that would be a problem if somebody was leaking that.
Well, but it's really from the journalist side. There are some clubs that they'll be super straight up. Like, oh, yeah, he's being assessed. They think 4 to 8 weeks. We'll know more in a couple of days. Other clubs don't say anything. Like, you'll literally see a guy go off in a stretcher with his leg hanging off, and then you ring up the club and say, hey, how's so-and-so? Was he taken to the hospital? And be like, well, we don't comment on that. Just speculation. I'm like, we speculate. We saw the guy. Like, we saw the ambulance leave. Like, I don't see what the big deal is.
No, there's
here,
no
frankly,
big deal.
at
There's
all.
no big deal.
Now, I've been giving Nuno Espirito Santos, Nottingham Forest, and of course, Mr. Marinakis, who is the secret to all this, love all season long. They lost to Everton and Abdoulaye Doucouré's late goal on Saturday. But, Robbo, here's your chance to praise Forest. We don't have you on that often. Tell me. I think this is just an incredible run this season that Forest and Nuno, of all people, have put together.
Yes, it's been excellent from them because under Cooper, and Cooper did obviously a very good job at Nottingham Forest, but when they first got into the Premier League, they had all these players coming from all over the world and they were trying to fit them in. They were changing the team week in, week out. He's come in and got a system that as he did at Wolves and he's played elsewhere. It works for them. They're very solid. They've got hard-working midfield players, and they've got plenty of pace up front in the wide areas. And they are a great counter-attacking team. They play at a really good pace. They play at a good tempo. They defend at a good tempo. They don't just sit back behind the ball.
They're very good defenders.
Yeah, they're good defenders, but they also are aggressive defenders. You know, there's a difference between sitting back and shuffling across the field. They want to go and win the ball back in the right areas and then play on the counter-attack from there. And you have to also give him credit. You know, Chris Wood. I've looked at him at other clubs, and he's a good centre forward, but he's made him into an excellent centre forward this season. You know, he looks a player that every time
Kiwi Holland,
the ball comes in the box, he looks like he's going to get on the end of it. When it comes into his body, he looks like he might turn people and hold the play up so others can go and join him. So I've been very impressed with what I've seen from Nottingham Forest. It wasn't their best game against Everton at the weekend, but there's that little bit of edgy nerves. It was amongst the crowd as well. I think he's done a fantastic job in a short space of time, really.
They just slipped to fourth this weekend, 1 point behind Newcastle. But when you talk about that kind of, if we think of like a defensive triangle, right? Two center backs, Milinkovic and Murillo, and the goalkeeper Sells.
Yeah.
When I don't know if this correlates to success in the Premier League, but when I ask myself, who has a better trio like that? Center backs plus goalkeeper. I would say Liverpool do, and I would say Arsenal
That's
do.
with Konate playing, I presume.
No, it's with Jogo. No,
Well.
Konate, Van Dijk, and Alisson. I think I would take them ahead of Murillo, Milinkovic, and Sells.
What about Arsenal when they've got?
I would take yes. If it's not Kivior, if it's Gabriel, I would take Gabriel Saliba. I'm not a big David Raya fan, but I would take that trio as a group ahead of the Forest one. I don't know. There's too many others.
No,
I would take even like City this season. Yeah, sure. No, theoretically. But not in practice this season.
No, not at all.
Chelsea, yeah, whatever. Can you think of any at the top of your head?
No, because most of the others, they swap and change the centre-halves and they're not quite sure who their best centre-halves are. The same can be said about Man City and Chelsea. They're never quite sure who the best centre-halves are, whereas at Nottingham Forest, at the moment, they know exactly what their best team is.
Onana, Maguire, and no, just kidding.
No.
All right. The goals come late as Aston Villa trounced Southampton 3-0. Rob, are you impressed? On the one hand, it's a big away win sandwiched between two Champions League quarterfinals. Not a lot of the teams that played in the Champions League did well this weekend.
No.
On the other hand, Southampton.
Yeah, and everybody's played well against Southampton. I watched the highlights of the game and listened to lots of things that have been said about it. And when I've seen Aston Villa this season, in the main, they've got a very good squad. They've got an excellent coach in Emery. They play quite adventurous football. They've got pace in the right areas. You know, they're able to keep a lot of their players on the bench and still came off and affected the game. The only question I have about Aston Villa, at times I've seen them play, and again, it was a couple of FA Cup games and a league game where they played too slow, and I couldn't understand that you're a goal down and you're still, and you don't like the Chelsea players doing, passing it to each other across the back, going back to the goalkeeper, passing it to the centre. Play with more urgency. Get the ball forward into more dangerous areas.
What I would say, though, is I feel that everything Villa do, other than individual errors, is by design.
Yes.
Because that's how Unai Emery wants it. And it's part of his plan.
Yeah.
I think there's very few teams in the Premier League where you can tell that the coach has such influence over the players. And, maybe that's the robotic football that Gary Neville and others were talking about.
Now, Chelsea's parent company, 22 Holdco, who also owns Strasbourg and the women's team, lost more than £1 billion over the last 2 seasons. Gab, are you surprised by that?
I'm not surprised, and it's not hard to see how they end up losing all this money because while Chelsea claim in their accounts that they made a profit of $129.6 million. So 22 Holdco bought the women's team from Chelsea for $200 million. They bought those hotels at Stamford Bridge from Chelsea for $76.5 million. They have debt of $1.15 billion, largely which is debt that was put on when they bought the club. And they had to pay $94 million in interest payments just last year on that amount. So it's not surprising that, and their losses actually went down. Now, when people look at this, and this is why we have yet to see if the Premier League will allow for Chelsea to record that 200 or 150, whatever it is, from the sale of the women's team. UEFA apparently won't, and so they're going to have to negotiate some sort of penalty with UEFA. It's a holding company. I mean, there's no escaping it, right?
No.
In the end, chickens come home to roost. All that said, Strasbourg doing really, really well in Ligue 1.